Welcome to episode 54 of the AA Travel Talk Show, a podcast of the Canada Marketing Group and ehCanadaTravel.com. If you notice there, Junior, we had our first relaxing of COVID rules, and we brought in our virtual crowd that have had 2 shots. We are good
Awesome
here.
crowd.
And you
Yes,
see how excited they were, right?
you could tell everybody's pretty happy about the future here. Hopefully everything goes out well and
Yep, I
free
agree.
again.
The A Travel Talk Show, for all of you newbies who are joining us tonight, is the most best way of getting Canadianized in this world right now. And we are beamed down to us live from our Co-Bro satellite every Tuesday, 7 p.m. from our base camp, somewheres here in beautiful backcountry Canada. This is a live show, if you haven't figured it out yet. So stuff happens. If we lose internet, no worries, stick around, grab some Bannock, and we'll be right back. Do not change the channel. Keep your dial on the A Travel Talk Show. Keep it Canadian, please. Thank you, and sorry. Tonight, our special guest, and we're very happy to have him on the show, is Keith Henry, President and Chief Executive Officer at Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. And for you newbies, in short, it's ITAC, ITAC. Keith Keith will also be coming to us and talk to us. He also works, and I should mention this, he's also the CEO of the BC Métis Foundation and Director of Tourism HR Canada, okay? Keith is going to join us in a few minutes, but as you regular viewers will know, we're going to do a little bit of a stick that we do, and we bring you up to speed on what's going on in our passion and what's going on in our world, and Keith will be joining us in about 10 minutes to discuss Indigenous tourism and his efforts to build, preserve, and share culture, history, traditions, and language through tourism. In researching this amazing tourism advocate, I came across a post calling Keith the Métis Schwarzenegger. So I guess what we're going to do is we're going to have to call Keith Schwarzenegger. His new nickname is Arnold.
I think so. It sounds good.
Now, I saw it on his post. There's a couple going Métis Schwarzenegger, and I love that. I think that's perfect, and all of you should know where that goes. So now, more than ever, his team of Indigenous Avengers are in a battle of a lifetime, preserving Indigenous tourism. And we're going to talk tourism today, and we're going to delve deep. But as we always say, to have fun when things are tough does not disregard the point of topic. It should be putting a light on the topic. So we are going to talk about something very important to us, and also very important to Arnold.
Sorry, that cracks me up. I'm sure he's probably laughing a little bit now too.
Yes. My name is Greg Gerard, this dashing brother of broderism. Beside me is the keeper of the code, my brother, my partner, my best friend, Colin Gerard. Say hi, Col.
That'll be me. Hello, folks. Thanks for coming out, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Yes, together we are nicknamed by our viewers, our followers, our advertisers, and our clients across this country. They have proudly nicknamed us the Brothers of Tourism. It's stuck, it's sticking, and we aren't going anywhere. And we celebrate broism at its best. You get it called broism, brother tourism.
It's pretty much hard not to get because we inject it in everything.
I know. Well, I just thought in case you were new to the show too, right?
Is there a guest out there that knows we're not brothers?
Exactly. For you newbies to the show, here's the lowdown, hoedown, touchdown, downtown version of 2021. So far, we are the Co-Bro owners of Canada's award-winning content-driven travel website, ehCanadaTravel.com, voted Best Canadian Adventure Vacation Planner 2021, Lux Life International Tourism Awards. We operate an award-winning blog called Two Brothers, 2 Feet, 2 Curious, 2 Canadian. January this year, it was ranked 23rd in the top 1,000 global travel bloggers by Global Rise. Our recent Pride and Joy is a program that me and Junior and our team have developed for promoting small groups, small regions, small communities. Because right now in this country of ours, all we have are urban models. That doesn't cut it. We did 10 years of research. We built a nice, simple, small and rural Canada economic development, tourism, storytelling platform, and training program designed for small and rural Canadian communities, groups, and regions. 100% Canadian made with no artificial ingredients added. In March 2021, and we're going to boast about this because we're proud about this. In March 2021, our Experience Community Program won Canada Prestige Award for the best marketing program in this country.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge.
top it off in March 2021, we went one step even better as we got a little bit of a government pat on the back, and we all know how fun it is dealing with the government. We won the 2021 BC Economic Development Association Award for Best Community Project Award under 20,000 population. Hiya! Right?
That
That's
is
exciting.
also huge.
It is
You
huge,
betcha.
and we're doing our best. We're the new kids on the block. We're loud, we're brash, we say what it's like, and we believe in Canadian tourism on all fronts. And we don't believe we're getting a good stick in this game. We don't believe we're getting a voice in this game. And it's a lot out there happening. Every community group should look into this first market. So tonight, guess what? We are going to talk Indigenous tourism tonight. As you knuckleheads know, Cole and I completed a 10-year study of Canadian tourism in small towns, 1,000 communities, 4,000 parks and trails, 1,000 historic sites. And here are some of our favorite that we went to of the Indigenous tourism realm. One, we enjoyed driving the Great Spirit Trail of Indigenous experiences on Manitoulin Island, Ontario. Fantastic.
Yeah.
If you haven't done it, you should do it.
Manitoulin Island was awesome.
Unbelievable. It was absolutely
Beautiful.
beautiful, right? We went into the head smashed in Buffalo Jump. Most people who go down that way near Fort Macleod will go to that. We highly suggest it. And if you don't go, there's a big part of history there that you need to know on how things were a long time ago. And it's a really, really beautifully well presented interpretation center. One that I think doesn't get enough cred call is that Museum of Northern British Columbia in Prince Rupert, BC. Remember that? That's where we bought Mom those Indigenous earrings and that Indigenous ring.
Yes.
By the way, to the people of North British Columbia and Prince Rupert, BC, my mother loves her jewelry and she won't take it off.
Absolutely.
So there you go. Pat off the back to you. That was phenomenal. And they celebrate it was. And then the nice thing is, which is really cool, right? It's in a large cedar wood longhouse.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the photos we used to honor and to tell people that Keith Henry is coming on the show is actually the 3 totem poles in front of that museum.
Nice.
Yes. Then our favorite, probably one of our favorite, because we have gone 3 times, is the Haida Gwaii Museum, Art and Carving Sheds in Skidegate, BC. Now, anyone who hasn't done that, you're absolutely insane. Get on the boat and go there. This is amazing. If you have not seen a totem pole carved and allowed, because a lot of times, this is sacred stuff. So sometimes you're not allowed. If they are humble enough, and if you're humble enough and they allow you to watch and allow them to explain what everything means, every tool has a meaning, every carve has a meaning, every shave has a meaning, every color has a meaning, every image has a meaning. It's an amazing process and I highly suggest it. So those are a couple that have left a very good impression. Okay. So let me tell our viewers, and I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but there's a lot happening out there in the last 3 months with tourism in general. But tonight we're going to talk about the Indigenous tourism piece. Recently, the global cultural tourism market came out in 2024 report, was released just before COVID. Okay. The report estimated that the global cultural tourism market is poised to grow by $2,565 billion during the 20 and 24 year. Here in Canada, pre-COVID, the work of Keith Henry and his group, Indigenous Tourism, was showing a 23-ish, 24% increase between 2014 and 2017. Tourism in general across the country had a 14.5% increase in overall tourism. According to Indigenous Tourism Association Canada, as of 2020, there were reported 1,900 Indigenous tourism businesses employing 40,000 people, generating $1.9 billion in direct GDP contributions to the Canadian economy. Everybody to the Canadian economy. What I don't get sometimes is that we're so short-sighted. The communities that are around Indigenous attractions, Indigenous tours, they benefit so much on the domino effect of how much that money rolls down. People need to stay somewhere. They need to eat somewhere. They need to do something. They need to complement 1 or 2 days. Longer visits, it's proven state, longer average stay increases when they do Indigenous events. Plus, Indigenous tourism attracts international tourists, which have a higher average spend and would spend longer in your community. So I don't
Mm.
understand the math, and Keith Henry is going to help us with that.
There's such a huge, I agree, there's such a huge demand for indigenous tourism.
Unbelievable
And
demand.
it's Canada. It's got Canada all over it. And I mean, me and you have been to some of the dances and the potlucks and
Powwow.
powwows.
Yep.
I mean, you can't beat that experience.
Nope. So here's the thing. ITAC operate on a 21 million budget 2021, and I'm sure I'll get corrected if my numbers are wrong, and I sure do hope I get corrected, which included a COVID relief funding program to allocate to business. So not only did their budget 21 million, but it included COVID relief. Okay. So, okay, here we are. New federal budget's coming out. We're all excited. Yay. Tourism's a big driver. Tourism is growing faster than any other aspect of tourism. We're stoked. Something's going to happen here. We're pretty excited, eh? The new federal budget comes out, 2.4 million. Ouch. What? That's
A
what
little
I'd
bit
be
of missing
doing.
the boat there.
I'd be going, what? What's going on? So Indigenous
That's
tourism.
ridiculous.
Tell me how this math works. And now I'm going to use my kindergarten math because that's how simple this is. Indigenous tourism is one of the fastest growing traveler markets in the world. At the time when the industry is trending for more personal experiences and connections, and the government Canada bails out. How does that make sense? It shows, and I'm not, these aren't my words, because I got a lot of very, very influential friends around the world in this industry, and a lot of us think the same way, and we're a very small group, a vocal group. It shows short-sightedness and a lack of understanding of emergent travel trends by our government tourism. It shows absolutely short-sightedness of what's going on. Not only is it the biggest trend, fastest growing trend, it's where most of the other countries are investing their dollars in right now. So they do not even understand the highest spending travelers are attracted to cultural tourism. And
especially international.
Yeah, but get this. On a report I found, I think it was CBC. I should have put it here, but I think it was CBC that they were doing a documentary on it. And as tourism industry research shows that more than 1 in 3 visitors to Canada are interested in authentic Indigenous tourism. 1 in 3, Colin. Now,
absolutely.
Let's look at the total million visitors we get across the country divided by 3, and 1 in 3, which is highest average spender, increases average stay, and the domino effect that flows down into communities surrounding that Indigenous experience is phenomenal. Okay. Our guest tonight, Mr. Keith Henry, we are so excited he's coming on the show. I cannot wait to hear what he has to say. We're going to Canadianize him. We're going to A him to death. We're going to A him all the way to the end, because that's what we do here. And that's why our show is growing. That's why we're getting some amazing guests from around the world. And we're proudly Canadian on all fronts. We're proudly Canadian. Our guest is quoted as saying, "It is a shame and a pity that we're falling behind. It will be nearly impossible to get back on top after this giant step back, which is the equivalent of losing 30 years of progress and development." That's how big of a kick that we have just given the fastest growing tourism sector in the world.
Wow. That says a lot.
Yep. So we're going to talk Indigenous tourism recovery strategy and a lack of strategic investment for Indigenous tourism in Canada with our guest tonight, Keith Henry. Let me tell you a little bit about this amazing advocate. And I personally, we had a little bit of time in our virtual green room while Keith was munching on some bannock, and we had a good opportunity to talk with them and get to know him a bit. I do hope it's not the first and the last time that we get some good quality time with the man. He's an adventure outdoorsman. He loves the outdoors. Well, that scores points with us because we're pretty much anything with dirt, grind, and water, we're in, and we'll go slosh in it. So we're really happy. So Keith here, he began his career, and again, Keith, when you come on, correct me if I'm wrong. Keith began his career in 1995 as a teacher. Later on, Keith acted as a consultant with provincial and federal government agencies for various Indigenous nonprofits. His career kept growing. Keith has become an Indigenous cultural tourism leader around the world, receiving international recognition as the former CEO of Indigenous Tourism British Columbia, Canada, and as the current CEO of Indigenous Tourism of Canada. He is the president and the CEO of the BC Métis Foundation and director of Tourism HR Canada. And our favorite, Mr. Keith Henry, is the president, chief honcho of Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. And for all of you who aren't familiar with the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, it's ITAC. Search it, follow it, and share it. They are a consortium of over 20 or more Indigenous tourism industry organizations and government representatives from across Canada. And I am sure that number has grown. I know it's grown by 2A Travel Brothers, and we're not part of it. So we're honorary now. We're self-inflicted honoraries, right?
We're crashing the party.
We're crashing the party. We're crashing that tourism party. So again, we are Greg and Colin, the Brothers of Tourism. We're pretty stoked to have our guest on the show. So let's put our virtual hands together. Let's put them together real loud, and let's bring Mr. Keith Henry back on to our stage. Welcome to the show, Keith Henry.
Yeah. Well, good evening, and thanks for having me on. It's quite the introduction there. I've enjoyed the show.
Excellent. Excellent. That's what we're all about. Entertainment and tourism. So if we can, and put a little Canadian slice of bread in there too, because that's just the way it has to be out here in Canada land. So Keith, we know a little bit more about you because we take an interest in your goals and your mission. But maybe for some people who have been living in a cave or under a rock, maybe you could let them know a little bit about who Keith Henry is and ITAC.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's really an honor to be on the show. I'm glad you're talking about this issue we're talking about tonight. I've been president and CEO. I helped rebuild the national organization and started roughly in around 2010. I was working with Indigenous Tourism BC. I joined the Indigenous tourism world in 2005, give or take. And I was on a committee with, then it was called Aboriginal Tourism Association of BC. And I was wondering, I'm Indigenous myself. I'm from one of the communities, I'm Métis. And I'd done a lot of Indigenous Act Dev, a lot of education, as you talked about. And I just kind of sort of started to get interested in tourism because I sort of originally viewed tourism as this thing where it was summer jobs and, it was kind of just going to the lake for the weekend and maybe having some rustic cabins. And it's just because of my own personal life experiences. But what it started to plant the seed in me in 2005 was realizing, we as Indigenous people are trying to see our culture thrive and sustain itself. And we want to celebrate our languages and our cultural diversity in Canada. And I really quickly learned that, wow, this tourism actually is one of the most effective ways to do it because A, consumers want it, and B, you can actually get paid to do your culture in whether it's in all the ways it manifests, like food, restaurants, hotels, cultural centers, outdoor adventure. So I just started to walk that path of getting involved in tourism and seeing how the industry works. It's a very large industry, lots of layers of non-Indigenous industry partners. And now, so I've been cultivating that, I guess, awareness, that knowledge. And so I took the job on in 2008 with Aboriginal Tourism BC, it was called at the time. It's since evolved to Indigenous Tourism BC. I held that post till 2015, and I was concurrently trying to build the national organization because we could see in BC at the time we didn't have a national voice. I mean, there's non-Indigenous sector voices, but there was no one talking about Indigenous issues and how Indigenous tourism businesses build, whether it's marketing, development, raising money, access to capital, federal legislation like employment insurance issues for staff. They're very different for many Indigenous communities where there's things like the Indian Act and other things that we're dealing with in Canada. So we recognized with a bunch of our sort of industry bodies, there was at that time in 2008 when I took the job and I started to cultivate relationships across the country, very few provincial organizations like what we had in BC with Indigenous Tourism BC. So we started to pull together partners and Indigenous leaders. We saw champions in every province and territory. So we need to build this. So anyways, over that time, I was concurrently working with BC. The board was very supportive. And we started to build a national organization. By 2015, we had developed the governance, the initial bylaws, initial strategy, and we launched it. And I've held that post trying to build ever since. And I have to be honest, until recently, this last month, it's been a dream calling for me because I'm passionate about it. I love the work I do. I get to help promote culture. We see jobs being created. In the last 5 years, we had just about 500 new business startups in this country, all Indigenous owned and operated. You brought up a really good point. People think we do this because of the politics, right? Because this federal government talks about reconciliation, and those agendas are important. I take nothing away from that. But the beauty of this is it's consumer demanded. What internationally and domestically, Canadians are thirsting to understand Indigenous people, and you can't just drive up to the local Indigenous, if it's a First Nation, a band office, and say, "Here, give me the 101 of the culture here."
Yep.
We do that through our tourism businesses. That's exactly how we integrate people. When schools want to learn about the local Indigenous communities and the history in the area, they go to the cultural centers. Well, that's part of our tourism business inventory. If they want to bring in artisans, well, those are part of our Indigenous tourism business world, right? So we've been really seeing such a, as this has evolved, I've seen almost what was happening is I saw so many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit communities or leaders just really saying, wow, tourism's a legit thing. It's I didn't realize it had 40,000 people working. I didn't realize it was 1.9 billion. Like we're one of the largest we were pre-COVID, we were one of the largest economic drivers for Indigenous communities in the country. And most Indigenous leaders weren't 100% sure that they didn't realize that, Like some of this is very big business. You mentioned some of your locations there in Manitoulin Island. Well, you look here in BC, if I take you to Quayout Lodge in the interior, Quayout Lodge, they were inviting guests from around the world, or Spirit Ridge with Inkameep, and they have the winery now, and the hotel, and the golf, and so it's a really big industry in not only BC and across the country. So, yeah, all that to say, it's been an honor for me. Like, I got one of the highlight for me in my life so far. I didn't set out to get awards and that, but I did get quite a few for whatever, I guess, the work that was being observed from the outside looking in. And the biggest one for me was, not too long ago, I got my honorary PhD designation from a University of Guelph out in Ontario. I didn't even know they were watching my career unfold. And it was. I haven't gone to the ceremony because I don't want to go till I can do it in person, because it's a really big deal for me. So it's nice to see that. Yeah, thank you. But it's nice to see, because what I'm trying to do is show that there's a lot of ways we talk about economic development in Indigenous communities. You hear about the energy sector, which can be always divisive. You hear about whatever, mining, forestry, fisheries, but fisheries is now not as lucrative as it once was.
Yep.
But tourism is, I still believe, once we get past COVID, will be the most stable, sustainable way to help our communities grow economically into the future, and not because of politics, but because the world wants it, and it's as simple as that. It's really not, there's no magical formula. It needs to be authentic. It needs to be owned by the Indigenous people in the communities, and we can and to your point, a rising tide lifts all ships, right? We know those kind of cliche sayings. If we do this right in Canada with tourism, in the industry in general, it's going to help everyone. It won't just help Indigenous operators. It'll help everyone in the sector.
Yep. And it also puts us on a world stage in a whole new market segment, which we're and if anyone's done any type of traveling or any type of research, you look at the Indigenous tourism in Australia or New Zealand, and it's going really well. They've done a great job. They've just invested a whole bunch of money into it again this year. So there's a lot of opportunity, and I totally agree that the filter down. But one thing I caught in that you says, when you invite us out to Quayout Lodge. So when is that again?
Well, I don't know if I said that. I said, there's so many locations, right? You name it. Like even here, I'm in Vancouver. I'm in North Van, in my apartment, where I live, and even here with this, we got the Squatch Eyes Lodge down just on, I don't know if it's like a boutique small hotel. It started up with just to help, and the money they make goes to sustain the artisans in the facility. And they got a gallery. It's an economic food chain. They've got basically about 14 rooms for guests, and then they have a gallery that has the artisan, and they keep another floor just for artisans, and they in-house they provide living accommodations.
I love this.
Wow.
And it's one of those stories, and they're struggling right now because the guests help pay the bills, right? And so we got to get tourism back up and running, and the sooner the better. These businesses are very vulnerable, but like I said, the positive through all this, I want hopefully people to hear, is that the the demand is there. And in fact, just to share one other tidbit with you, we did some market research with Insignia Marketing and research. We did consumer research across Canada last fall. And one thing COVID has done for the world, and especially Canadians, is they're starting to realize, the world sometimes we face things that are out of our control, and we should appreciate the world we live in. And there's become a consciousness now that people want open space, and they want to get back to values that respect the earth in a little different way than they hadn't really thought about. And they see Indigenous people and a lot of our ways of thinking and spirituality and practice is that they want to touch and feel that more than ever. And I think we were already growing dramatically pre-COVID. I think if we can find a way to stabilize enough businesses to come out of this, I think Indigenous tourism is going to be growing rapidly, even faster than what it was, the stats you mentioned. We were outpacing the industry already. I think we're going to especially outpace the industry if we do this right.
I think you're bang on. I think, I know, I think just from talking with people that for sure there's going to be a surge when this opens up. And I think the surge, and I think right now with what we're learning through the program that we've developed, we just finished it, putting it in a community here in the interior, which is about storytelling. It's about experiences, and it's winning us a lot of awards. It's actually something we should show you and see, maybe there's something there too. But the whole fact of it is that the reason it's successful is because travelers want to hear the stories. They're done with facts and figure tourism. That will not exist anymore. They're too educated because of social media. So they're looking for the story. They're looking for the experience. They're looking for the connection, which is exactly what Indigenous tourism does.
Well, a lot of Canadians even want to know, well, Indigenous people survived viruses in the past, not effectively. I mean, we know that things like smallpox and everything. But what I'm saying is, when we did the research, if we asked groups of non-Indigenous people, we brought consumers in from Halifax and Toronto, and in Calgary and Vancouver. We did focus groups, one in Yellowknife, and it was interesting to hear the kind of perspective we heard, that because as we live in this Indigenous tourism world, so we think, why wouldn't people? But then we have to put ourselves in those. We did families, we did younger families, we did single people. And it was interesting to hear people say, well, the Indigenous people, from their perspective, is historically right or wrong as it may or may not have been, they viewed that Indigenous people were strong, and it was their connection to land and culture that actually helped them fight through the virus. So none of us, all of us know, we've never tackled a historic virus like this before. I mean, so what I'm saying is, it's created a new way of thinking for a lot of people. And I can't believe that's just Canada. I have to believe that's beyond the borders of Canada. And I think that, the world is going to want to continue to understand. Indigenous people really seem to understand that history may be repeating itself in a lot of ways here. And we need to return to some of those really core values of land and water, and why these things are important. It's not just about, but we're changing the world in a way that, we have to be conscious of, right? And I think it's really, and people want open space. They want less, they don't want over tourism. They won't want to go into, I really think that the cruise ship industry is going to have challenges into the future. Maybe not, but I think it's going to be a few years before that recovers. I think people are really, it's just changed people from what we could tell from the research we've done.
We've said on a few shows, Keith, that basically I think we have to throw the old playbook out, learn from it, and write a new playbook, because the traveler isn't the same traveler we were dealing with 15 months ago. Their priorities have changed. I think you hit it bang on the head. So here's a sort of good segue. What are some of the successes? Maybe touch on some of the big accomplishments, the highlights of ITAC. The reason I'm asking this is because in such a short period of time of 5 years, you've accomplished encyclopedia volume of stuff in 5 years. So maybe you could touch on some of the highlights.
Well, I think the highlight for why we grew Indigenous tourism in Canada at a pace that was like the envy of other countries. You mentioned Australia and New Zealand. Well, they've brought us out there now, like their governments. We've been out there a few times explaining what we've done. And what I would say Canada, we did really well, and we should be proud of, is we had an Indigenous-led strategy. So ITAC is Indigenous-led. It's not we're not government. Most of our staff, like myself, are either First Nations or Métis or Inuit. We have an Indigenous board of businesses. So we really put that focus. And what we did is we set out in 2015, we implemented a strategy called the Path Forward. And it was amazing when we put that out there. All of a sudden, all the marketing organizations started to really more connect with us and started to market Indigenous tourism in a way we needed. So we started to be more in trade shows. We started to be seeing more itineraries being created. Like we all know, there's certain sales channels in tourism. It's not just, the problem with Indigenous tourism that I could see years ago. We just sort of, our community would get excited, our entrepreneurs would get excited, and then they just open up a business and wonder where the customers are. Like, and we all know, like, tourism is a very competitive industry, and unless you're with the right tour operators and agencies and everything, it's pretty tough to get, a lot of like free independent travelers. And so, which we've been spending a lot of time through that strategy, making sure we course correct how we're selling the product and the experiences. That's been one of our big reasons we've seen success. So what that did was now create more opportunity to create more spin-off businesses in the local areas where the itineraries were going through. And we were just seeing a lot more packaging, right? And so we were doing more trade work in China, the US. We were doing a lot of trade work. We maintained trade work in Japan. We were doing trade work in France, Germany, and the UK. And those were some of our best markets. In fact, pre-COVID, of the 1.9 billion you referenced, 70% of that money was coming from the international travelers. They were 45% of our customers in terms of volume, but they were spending 70% of the money. They were a huge beneficiary to us. So those are the kind of things that I would say that's been the success. We took our knowledge as an organization and really handheld our businesses, and that's what it takes. It is heavy lifting, because some of our businesses are very sophisticated, but unfortunately we're incubating a whole new sector, and we have been. And 1,800, 1,900 businesses sounds like a lot, but in Canada, let's put that into perspective. There's over 225,000 tourism businesses. We're a very small percentage. And what we identified was how we're going to get more of those businesses to be more export and market ready. Those are realities. The industry won't change for us. We have to adjust to those practical realities. So we did that. We created a national manual for authenticity. We started to put out our own marketing strategies. All of a sudden, people were buying into our marketing strategies. We saw new industry partnerships, like with WestJet, private sector partners. We just put a playbook out that really, I think, people could see the vision, that it wasn't just politics and some pats on the back and tokenism. It was about there's an economic benefit here if we do this right. And so we saw that. And I would say that's some of our work, I would say, was really great. We did it. And the other thing that we were having lacking in the industry was we just had no research. Like everything in tourism is largely adopted out of a certain modeling that is largely driven by Stats Canada and it's very macroeconomics. So we had to figure out, like, how much is actually, so when you say those numbers about those, we're saying in 1900, that's because we did that work. No one was doing that specific Indigenous tourism research. We couldn't say to the industry how many people actually are working in our businesses. And now we do that. Like, we survey our businesses like we have all through COVID. So we've been doing, that's been another key to our success. I feel it's been the marketing, that research to explain to the industry, wake up, like the industry needs to buy in. It's a very large machine. And, I think you said something those are some of the things. And I would say that before I go off on another tangent, I would say that the other victories are what we did this last year is we pivoted on a dime. Like, we had no choice. We could see COVID was hitting us. We immediately created a COVID recovery strategy. We originally had a plan to 2024 that was going to see Indigenous tourism go from 1.9 billion. We figured it would be at least 2.2 by 2024. Well, that now it's taken a nosedive down because out of our control. But so now we've created a new recovery strategy. So we've got a really, I think, we've got a really strong organization. We've signed over. Last year we had about 40 partnership agreements, like a lot of non-Indigenous trying to buy into the concept. So I just think when you see that many people buying into it, that we're doing, it's not perfect by any means, but it's giving it a way for people to really buy into what we were trying to do in the country. And just a couple other points. We've been taken around the world now and asked to come give and it's so funny because really all we did was put an Indigenous strategy together. Sometimes people overthink this stuff. You know what I mean by that? I really watch other countries and they're like, oh, we want to do this. And it's not some magical formula. It's still basic business, but you have to it needs to be Indigenous led. You can't do this. And the big reason is because authenticity, even though I'm Indigenous, even though our team is Indigenous, when we get to the communities got to trust us. Because if we market it in a way that's offensive, we're toast. Like we can't Disneyfy this. We can't, too many consumers in the world have seen Dances with Wolves and all these stories that really are Hollywood, like, fictitious.
Yeah.
That's why we have people that come here that expect to see Indigenous people riding on horseback with, traditional regalia from the 1700s. I mean, it's not realistic. It's
No.
people, our cultures have evolved, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so so anyways, my point is that these are all the kind of, there's been a laundry list of issues we've tackled, but I would say that we've come a long ways, and I think the world has seen it. And unfortunately, as we, now we're facing the biggest challenge now, because as far as we came doing all those kind of things I'm talking about, really the federal budget was a disappointment, right? So.
Oh yeah. And you know what? I have full faith in Métis Schwarzenegger solve this issue. I'm telling you right now.
Okay, wait. I gotta just clarify that. That's my friend Dale. I've known him a long time. I was a teacher up in Cumberland House. He's a Métis leader from up there. And anyways, years ago, I got into some bodybuilding, so he's never let me hear the end of this.
Those are the best friends.
Yeah. So he's a really awesome guy, and
You can
have
tell.
tons of respect for him. But yeah, he always puts that on my darn social media. And it's kind of embarrassing, but I know he's like, it's our thing, right? So what can I do?
I love it. And that's the human side of Keith Henry, right? That's the human side.
You're stuck with it.
Yeah. And I love my old friends for that. I mean, how many times they put stuff about the history of what we've done in the past and the nicknames. That's all about. I thought when I read that, I says, that's the Keith Henry I want to know, the one that has that humor and can, enjoys the life. And then I saw your sturgeon pictures, and I says, that's the guy I want to know. I want to know that guy. So that you sort of touched on it, Keith, and I really want to I want our audience and our viewers tonight, down the road, and on search engines when it starts positioning, is that the one thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is that we understand the community. In order to put tourism, you sort of have to have this respecting of the elders, and they play a large part in the development of Indigenous tourism. And you touched, and I read there in an article that an elder said Indigenous tourism businesses showcase culture, heritage, and traditions, and because these belong to the entire community, that they should belong to the entire community because it is part of the community. So my question is this: what are the challenges of balancing tourism development, which again is a sort of a new element, while respecting the wishes of the elders when it comes to culture, traditions, and language, which spans, as you know, more than anyone, many generations. So how do you bridge that?
Well, we've done I'll talk just sort of practically first, and then I'll talk sort of philosophically about it. What we did is, there was a challenge in this country, as there is many countries, how to build Indigenous tourism for a community, right? And yeah, it sounds interesting, but right away, people, especially elders, and some of the, I often find there's skepticism, and well, what's this really about? The local marketing organization is telling us there's these great opportunities, but I don't really know these people, and what's this all about? Yep. So we created one of the things we did. I didn't touch on it in the previous question, but we created a national manual for market readiness and authenticity. And within that, we put sort of a suggested sort of planning process. And there's two ways our communities, whether you're First Nation, Inuit, or Métis in this country, first of all, communities, we've been trying to work with many communities through, if they have a comprehensive, like what we call it is a comprehensive community plan. So many First Nations, they create a CCP. And what we've been saying before entrepreneurs run ahead, let's make sure the community has supported tourism as part of their economic development undertakings, right? Yep, there's some basic steps of governance. So when we go to other countries, we've been asked to, like, we ask, is there a strategic plan already in place? Like, we don't want to create tourism out of the blue and then force it down on communities and make people, think they're selling their culture, pennies on for whatever, right? It's tokenism. So in Canada, we've taken an approach on just making sure people understand that whether Inuit, they have other sort of community processes. Métis are kind of more difficult because we have some settlements in Alberta, and then we have a lot of urban Métis people that form these nonprofit organizations. So we just want to make sure that there is local support for tourism. Once we sort of see that's in the checklist of things, then you start going through a strategy development process. And we've got that all outlined in our national manual for market readiness and authenticity. And so we provide those kind of tools out there for free. And then what happens is we get a lot of communities that say to us, well, we're thinking about it. They reach out to us or maybe one of our provincial territorial Indigenous tourism partners like Indigenous Tourism BC or whatever. And they often ask us, do you have the, consultants you can refer? And that's, we don't like to be in the middle of that, but we like to help facilitate the process with them. So it's two pieces. One is governance, and the other is then finding the right leadership or consultant, or staff they can hire to help guide them through the process. When you get into those conversations, that's when it gets really challenging, because one of the values we've got as many Indigenous people, we like to give things away for nothing. And in tourism, we're telling them, don't do that. So it's a really sensitive conversation, right? Someone will say, well, we have a local Indigenous artist. He's making this and he's selling them for $50, and that's outrageous, and it's like, but you got to remember, they're trying to create a business. So we have to have that conversation, because if part of the challenge we got is the non-Indigenous economics, right? If consumers perceive it that it's got no value, then it's worthless. We have to price ourselves right, and it goes right from artisans right to our experiences. We have some amazing outdoor adventure guided tours, and people charge pennies. And I keep saying, listen, first of all, you need to price yourself right. So we've got this whole process about pricing, because it's our culture. We like to give things away. We like to welcome people. For Métis, we welcome you in. We call it a kitchen party. You get tea, bannock, before you know what you've eaten outside of house and home, and you're gone, right? But that's not the way you build a business. And so we're just trying to build the capacity of entrepreneurship within a lot of a lot have it, but we still face those challenges. So those are the kind of issues we're facing in Canada. And I would say we've come a long ways, and but I still hear it. We really touch a lot of that. We were doing a lot of conferences and a lot of workshop stuff across the country. And we want people to not feel guilty about properly charging for your product, because if you're going to work with a tour operator from China, that's probably not the right comparison these days, but maybe the UK, they're going to take 25 to 35% of that in price just to sell you. So you have to know how to understand commissionable rates. These are the things about export readiness we get into that's more of a mature or sophisticated conversation, but we try and walk the businesses through that, from startup to market, to visitor, doors open, to visitor ready, to really market and export ready. And it's a process. It is a process. We've done that through the guide that I keep referencing.
Yeah, and I actually I saw that guide. I must apologize, I haven't had a chance to read through it, but very nicely presented. It's pretty hard not to find it. It's because it's all over the place. So it's obviously getting good traction, and I think the key point is there's a learning process and an education process on both fronts, not only the tourism business itself, but also on the traveler. And that's where sometimes I think there is a disconnect, because trends are trending and things are changing, and traveler habits are changing, and how to market the traveler and how to market the destination, that's all changing. And it's going to be amazing to watch this shuffle, because we're seeing a lot of, for us, not to put a damper on things, but we haven't been treated very well by the government tourisms either, because we're private, and we're sort of considered opposed to trying, and we've reached out on numerous occasions on it, and we're the largest privately operated tourism website. So I get that, but here's something what I think we need to talk about. Indigenous communities, there's some really good examples out there of Indigenous-led businesses. The Osoyoos Market, very well done. Haida Gwaii, very well done. Tofino, they've got some good examples there of whale watching, and then the hot pools and so forth. These are communities who, and then we have the other side of the coin, which really irks me, is we've got some really high quality wilderness communities, and maybe a little bit more remote, who don't have running water, fair food pricing, and heated homes. I mean, there's such a diverse disconnect there. And we have noticed that Canadians tend to know very little about the Indigenous history of Canada, partly because of biased media coverage. And for you and for us, I know for us, we have a big problem on how it's very biased and inconsistent support. So how do we move forward in tourism when there are barriers in place that are playing a role in the development of Indigenous tourism? So where do you see the steps being made to move forward?
Well, I think I think that why ITAC is and a body like an ITAC are so important, because you can't do tourism in a one-dimensional window. I mean, communities have to have proper infrastructure just to welcome guests, right? That's what you're getting at, right? If you're going to bring people to some of the northern remote communities, they need Wi-Fi, they need proper functioning internet, they need proper, of course, drinking water. They need to have the proper accommodation facilities. They need to have ability to provide food services, transportation. So I do see that conversation happening. I think we have a long ways to go still in Canada if we're going to develop. I mean, we have some very remote tourism. I mean, I think of, I'll just give you an example from, since you talked about the West Coast, the East Coast of Canada. So on Newfoundland, Labrador, Nain has a beautiful cultural center. It's an Inuit community on of course, East Canada. And but to get there is a really big challenge, and it's a beautiful spot once you get there. But once you get there, there's not a lot of services or infrastructure there, right? You can't just, there's some limited accommodations, and there's an airport there, and they have, flights are not always easiest to get, and weather can have, there's a lot of challenges. So we're dealing with one extreme to the next. But if you go through that packet to that place, and then you hopscotch up to the Torngats base camp, I call it the last Canadian safari. I mean, I've been to every part of this country with Indigenous tourism and seen many of our businesses, a lot of them. And I have to say that is still to this day my most special place I've ever been to in my life. It looks like, you see the fjords. People talk about the fjords in Finland, the massive rock cliffs, the beautiful water. There's icebergs floating by, and there is so much wildlife, polar bears everywhere. And I said, I say it was a last safari because when I you get to places, sometimes like, well, we may see some wildlife, we may not. And then sometimes it's 50-50. They can never guarantee it, right? The bears don't just come calling because you're standing there. I mean, that's just not the way wildlife works. But I mean, in that place, like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Like, I mean, everywhere. I mean, it was just incredible. And when the night came, they had it in these domes sort of. I've
seen those. Are those glass ones?
Well, they weren't glass. They were these other sort of formed ones. But oh my goodness, the Northern Lights and they only open for a few weeks. Like that's a once in a lifetime bucket list place, and Canadians don't even really know about it. The world doesn't quite, because they've just been the community there has been developing the package, and they've working with Parks Canada, and we've got these gems sitting there right now. And I know that once we get through COVID, like, these are once, like, people fly to Africa to see the safari. I don't know why they do that, because the truth, if you want to see, maybe you want to see lions, I guess, and zebra and all, and I understand that. But if you want to see polar bears, like, I mean, everywhere, and whales and other animals, it blew my mind. We were literally in these boats 20 meters from polar bears, and to hear them swimming and breathing, like, that alone,
that's amazing.
Like, it was insane. Like, there's like thousands of polar bears in that particular region. It's a really big. So my point is, we've got these gems, and I can think of other places. It's funny because you can go to the outdoor adventure like that, to that extreme, or you can go to, like, near Quebec City. The First Nations hotel in Wendake there. They got a hotel, they got a 5-star restaurant, they got a culture center that you can stay in, a traditional longhouse they've created for visitors.
Oh, that's cool.
It's I mean, it's one, you can go right from outdoor adventure that will, like, if you want to get your backpack and you want to have a really great, outdoor, you want lots of exercise, and it's a little more like, that's not for the faint of heart, that trip. Like, that's a trip where you're up and you're out and you're looking around.
I love that.
You're going over like mountains or you can just go relax at the Wendake Hotel, the premier hotel. So I mean, it's it's funny when people ask me what we really have, and I just say to people, go to, you talk about our website, but really to get a really good sense of more insight, it's destinationindigenous.ca. I think people see why we're fighting so hard to save the sector, because it took us a lot of years for communities and our industry to build this, and we can't, like, this is going to help Canada recover if we can stabilize this. This is what this is about.
And for our viewers today, tomorrow, in the future, that website we just put on the screen, destinationindigenous.ca. Please take a look, and please go there and follow, like, and do all that good stuff that you hear from us every week. And that is definitely one of the things too that with Colin and I, we've traveled pretty much all this country as well. And I'll tell you something, and we say this to everyone: Canada is one of the few countries left that we have free roaming wildlife that in almost every parts of the sector of our country. So. And I agree with you. I have no idea. I cannot figure it out how we go and spend all this money and go to a beach in Hawaii when we have some of the beautiful, most best beaches in the world here. And guess what? Our beaches have hiking trails nearby. We have parks nearby. We've got all these attractions nearby. It's the same, it's the same. I'll be up there. I think a lot of it is we're not educating Canadians enough about what we have here in our backyard, and that is going to be one of the positives that are coming out of COVID. Is we are now looking into that. We are more showing a vested interest into our own Canadian geography and Canadian experiences, right? So we'll see. So question here: if with the current situation, we're just going to touch on it, and I'll let you tell how you feel about with this federal budget. I mean, when I read that, when I shared it with my world friends on what was going on here, they absolutely could not believe. I mean, I literally, I had emails coming in from some stakeholders in Australia, UK, Japan, and US email me and say, "What are you guys doing?" I mean, it was a blow. So with what came out, what do you see? What plans are you going to do with this sort of thing? I know you're talking with them and you're trying to work out some solutions, but do you see how this is going to pan out? Because a 2.1 million budget from 21 million ain't going to cut it.
No, it was really, you touched on at the start of the show. It's been very disheartening for our whole sector. It's been interesting because we could feel the gut punch in all of our members. I mean, we have, we have 977 actually members, yes, we say we represent all these businesses, but it's another thing for actually people to take a membership out. And, and so we have a very large majority of the businesses that actually are like voting members in our organization. They care about what happens. You could feel a collective gut punch because, we're now in the third wave of COVID, and I know that's affecting the world. But we know from the research that Indigenous tourism was hit a little harder than the tourism sector. Like we're even more vulnerable. And it's because the reason is largely because a lot of it is fairly new businesses. They haven't built the accumulated surpluses. They just don't have the financial stability to weather the storm as long as it's happened. So yeah, last year we administered $21 million, 16.4 or so was invested directly into businesses. We helped 680 businesses directly with $25,000 grants. And we did a bunch of work with others with some $10,000 grants with WestJet and others that'll be announced shortly. We've been just trying to keep some basic cash flow in these businesses to just try and just stabilize them a little. We're also working with a number of Aboriginal financial institutions. We have 59 of those in the country that help sort of refinance and retool where those businesses can. But our request going into the budget, the federal budget that came out for the historic spend, was $68.3 million over 4 years, and it was going to be front loaded with some stuff this year. What it means now, at 2.4 million, it was a big, it was just not what we had hoped for. We've been very active publicly. We've gotten over 100 letters of support from business partners, both non-Indigenous and mostly Indigenous businesses that have just said this is calling on Federal Tourism Minister Jolie, Federal Minister of Indigenous Services Canada, Mark Miller, and of course, and Carolyn Bennett does Crown Indigenous Relations to say, look, you gotta find a way to fix this. Yeah. So we've seen a lot of, we've been covered in just about 300 media articles, and we're expecting another major one in Globe and Mail this week. So we're trying to keep the pressure on to try and find some solutions. What I can say is we found some interim solutions, but I'm not at liberty yet to say. The government has started to really try and figure out some steps, but I have no confidence yet until I see something real. And so I would say that it's fair to say this government, the federal government, the staff anyways, are trying to find a way to correct this. And I appreciate that. So I don't want to jeopardize that. But what I will say is when we've been building Indigenous tourism in this country, as many other countries want, the first thing you have to do is provide predictable, stable investments. And we've been cobbling this together, rebuilding this. And this is why Indigenous tourism has had so many challenges. It's history repeating itself again and again. This is the fourth, just so this is the fourth iteration of a national Indigenous organization. And they've all crashed and burned because of the exact same reason: government reduced funding. And what is lost on the public is that they seem to think that the tourism industry somehow stabilizes by its own source revenue. No, it doesn't. It's recycled tax dollars. That's all that is. The governments take hotel tax and other investments, and they recycle it into a portion of that back into the industry. So we are not, as Indigenous tourism, a lot of that comes with very specific legislation that Indigenous tourism organizations simply don't qualify for. Yep. So we do call on the government to make other sort of independent. So we've been advocating for that for years since we've been rebuilding. We said, if we don't stabilize, this is going to happen. And here we are, right? So we've been saying, so what it means right now is we've cut all programs. We have 9 Indigenous tourism partners from across the country. As of June 1st, they don't get any more money from us. And that means a few of them will probably just end up going insolvent. Our marketing programs have collapsed. We're going to do more grants, and we're going to triage a number of programs, the federal relief programs, because most of our businesses aren't qualifying. Less than 8% of our businesses have actually qualified through those programs.
I know that it's a joke. It's bizarre.
So we're trying to keep it's hard for me because I'm trying to be, as the president CEO, my responsibility is to keep an encouraging public face, but I also believe that we shouldn't sugarcoat and pretend there's not it's a huge storm facing us now. And we've basically said to the government behind closed doors, if we don't fix this, the industry is going to be hit even harder than it already has. And right now, we've closed 59% of those businesses in the country right now. It is 59%. We're down now. We estimate only 3,000 people are working in our industry right now. So we've lost, when I say 30 years, it's actually more than 30 years, but we're trying to keep it as general. We're doing another economic assessment with Conference Board of Canada. It is bad. And, I know we're all optimistic, and I am too, that the vaccines are coming, but it's not going to be fast enough for the summer season. We have basically lost the summer season for most of our business.
I agree with you. Totally agree.
So we've been saying to the government, this is we're triaging crisis here, right? We need to put some urgency. So, I would just say that we're working our way to try and do what we can with what we can. And, we've been meeting with Destination Canada, trying to create a new marketing campaign for domestic, but even that is tough because we can't really hit the switch and go on that yet until, the truly Canada reopens all the travel. We can't even move. I can't even move to Alberta to go for a trip right now.
I know.
There's a lot of overlap here.
I totally agree with that. Keith, before we let you go, and it's been an absolute honor to get a take on this. You are definitely ehCanada approved now, so that's a good thing. And Globe and Mail's got nothing on us, buddy. Just so you know.
Yeah. Oh no, I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I know I kind of rambled on, but
if you've ever watched any of our previous shows, we are ramble free, ramble encouraged, and that's the beauty about our program is it's very personable, and that's the way we like it. We want to know who the real Keith Henry is, and rambling is all part of the game. So no, I wouldn't even call it rambling. I think it's educating, and so thank you for that.
And watch out the government, because they don't know they're taking on Arnold.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I am very. It's hard because in my role, I work for a board. And it can't all be about Keith Henry, but I am passionate, and the reason I'm passionate is because, I may wear a suit today, and I may but I grew up on the land, and I grew up knowing my culture. And I grew up with grandparents that were ashamed of who they were. That's why it lights a fire in me. And so many of our people that have committed, I find I connect with so many of our entrepreneurs and our businesses because they've had that same experience. Yeah. When we talk about reconciliation in this country, this is reconciliation. What we're doing to share culture is the most effective way to reconcile the history of this country. Education in a positive way. So this really, it triggers a lot of us, and we're very passionate about it because, I grew up, my grandparents ashamed to say they were Métis, that they were half breeds. Like I faced it my whole childhood. So
Yeah.
it's funny how life is, puts us on a mission, and you want to know who I am, Greg? That's who I am. Like, that's what drives me. It's not about ego. It's about remembering my grandparents, and as a child, knowing that I could feel that they were ashamed of who they were. I could sense it. I could feel it as a 6-year-old kid. I could hear it in the way they talked about who we were. They spoke a French Michif, the Métis language for us around Prince Albert. It's like a French Cree mix, and they would, I remember them talking a lot about how hard it was. So, I love what I do, and I hope we can find a way through this. We're going to find a way. We're resilient, but I just hope the government can just wake up and realize this is like, you sent us a really bad message here on April 19th. You basically said the industry was worth investing in $1 billion. Indigenous issues were $18 billion, but Indigenous tourism got reduced by significant amount, by significant funding. And so what are we? It's a big contradiction. So we need to fix this, and we need to fix it now.
I totally agree. And I'll say this, and I'll say it publicly. I'm absolutely embarrassed of what because of the work you guys have done, and the education. It's a long haul. Hey, Canada tourism has had a 45-year head start. I mean, they were here 45 years ago where you are now, and their memories have gone poof in the air about how to build Canadian tourism. So, and we could have a whole nother show about, but it'd have to be off air. About what
on a positive. Anyway, one positive thing. Just imagine, forget the money, forget the politics, forget the challenges, but imagine when borders reopen, if we can get to a place where we're actually executing the economic potential of 1 in 3 international visitors, the actual economic potential of 1 in 3 domestic visitors, because right now, tourism in 2019 to Canada, I'm sure you know this, was worth about $102 billion. We were 2% of that economic, even though that's big, what we said at 1.9 billion, we were only 2%. We have basically another 28% potential to fulfill.
It's just starting.
It's just starting. That's why I said, if we can just find a way to get past these bumps now and find a way to government to realize this is actually going to help with job creation and for everybody, not just us, because we don't own the airlines. People are going to have to fly to our places. They're going to have to get transportation. Right. It's a very symbiotic circle. So
it's short-sighted, because that's exactly, they have to eat. They have to do things. They have to do other things besides their tourism experience. There's so much fall off. And I look at this and I'm going, how short-sighted can you be? It's growing so fast. It's such a potential industry. And like you said, it's a big part, and I'm glad you said it. It's a big part of reconciliation is by being proud of your tradition, your culture, and your language, and sharing that to the world I can't think of a better way to tell your story.
Yeah.
Right. So before we let you go, is there anything else you want to touch on, Keith?
Well, no, not at all. I just want to say thank you for having me on the show. It's been a real pleasure. I really appreciate your comedic format in a very difficult conversation. There's a lot of issues, and I hope we would ask people that, we appreciate letters of support. It's like I put a bunch of my social media. If people want to look, we encourage people to still do that. The government's listening. I think if we can keep the momentum going, that we might get there. I would appreciate just people just getting involved. Consider being a member of ITAC. It's free right now because we waived fees this year for everybody. We really want to continue to build the industry. Like, we've been doing everything we can to stabilize and look at Destination Indigenous, see what we're trying to help support. And if you get a chance, and the businesses are open, as I always say, spend some money there. Go there, visit. You certainly will have an experience of a life.
I totally agree. I've really enjoyed tonight's episode. And like I said to Colin before the show started, we could easily do a 3-hour show. I've really enjoyed, and I really, and sincerely from from the bottom of our heart, we really thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man, but I'm really happy that we could be a part of sharing the Indigenous story and the importance it is to the tourism industry. And I'm glad that we had an opportunity to discuss how we can participate as a country in a very important part of our tourism industry. Colin, you want to add anything else before we let Keith go?
Well, I just got to agree. I mean, it's been a total education for me today. Thank you. And ehCanada is 100% behind you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're going to be signing up, and
Yeah.
we're going to be in touch. We're going to see if we're the new guys on the block, but we're getting a pretty loud voice. So hopefully we could shout a little bit louder out there. And I'll tell you what, the government has no idea we're coming, and we're coming hard. So they better get their heads up, because we're going to be in the battle real soon. So it's good to have you, Keith. We're going to put you back in that green room. You know where the bannock is. We've replenished the bannock because you went crazy. So we put that back in there. And if you want to hang around, we could talk at the end, but we'll just close off the show. And again, it's been an honor and a pleasure. And the Brothers of Tourism are hopefully we can have you back down the road when things we can get an update on where things are going. So again, Keith, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's been an honor, Keith.
Yeah, yourself as well, Colin.
Okay there,
Wow.
juniors. So that was Mr. Keith Henry of ITAC. For you grade 2 students out there, that is the Indigenous. My tongue.
I guess sure.
Right.
That online learning isn't working for you.
Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. By all means, we've been putting up all the information online for everybody to look at, and we put all the links up there to get a hold of Keith Henry if you do have questions. And we also encourage you to look at. We put both their websites up there, including the one that is focusing on tourism, which is destinationindigenous.ca. Let me just plug that up there for Keith again, because that's an important web address. Please take a look at this site. Now, if any of you know and you know us well, please share, please follow, and please like. In today's world, tourism is won and lost on the internet through search engines and social media. That's where we can win the battle. We now have the tools that governments have. Now it's basically is learning how to use them, and that's exactly what ehCanada is all about. So we have been posting all of that up on the Broism Show. Again, my name is Greg Gerard. This good-looking dude beside me is my brother, best friend, and partner, Colin. We are the Brothers of Tourism in Canada. Tomorrow, you'll find this interview of Keith Henry on our award-winning live travel content travel website, ehCanadaTravel.com. And soon after that, you'll also be able to find it on our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and Tumblr social media pages. And at the end of the month, we're going to slap it up there on our award-winning blog, ranked 23rd in the world. So remember, Canada, book directly with tourism business websites or with Canadian referral websites. Like ours, there's no hidden commission fees charged to businesses. We need to book local. We need to help out Canadian tourism business now, not in a month, now. And how do we do that? Stop giving away your travel dollars. Stop giving away 13 to 18% of your booking fee to out-of-country head offices when you book online with Booking.com, Hotel.com, and Expedia. Not long ago, that 13 and 18% was put back into our communities. That 13 and 18% was put back into our businesses. That one act alone is going to help tourism businesses. And then you're saying, well, how do I book? Simple. It's called their website. So every business has a website. Now, if you go directly to that business's website, I could tell you right now, often it's less than what you find on these OTAs. And secondly, 13 to 18% commission doesn't fly off the handle and go to a office that is not in Canada. Because I don't know about you, Colin, I have not seen one of our dollars spent by Expedia marketing a trip to Canada. I don't know about you, but I have not seen that ad yet. Have you? Have you seen that one? Oh, what about that one by
Actually,
Hotel?
Expedia has. Sorry, I have to stand
No,
corrected
they have
there.
not said, come to Canada, book Canada. They have not shown off Canada. They have not done nothing. What they do is they take that 13%, put it in their big head office, because you know what? We have to decide as Canadians, what are we going to do? Are we going to go buy more yachts, mansions, islands for these CEOs of these big corporate OTAs, which for one, it's proven they shorten stays because they're not planning websites. They're not educational. They're booking. They don't do a thing to extend a stay in a community. This is important. When you book directly with the tourism business, not only are you giving them back that money, but that money That money used to buy the uniforms for your child's baseball team. That money used to sponsor events. That money cleaned up your community parks and trails. So, most importantly, we have to help Canadian tourism businesses right now by when travel opens up, you book directly because that helps them pay their mortgage, that helps them pay their lease. And most importantly, people, Canadians, we know you love Canadian businesses. Canadians, what you're doing is you're putting food on the table of Canadian families struggling in a tourism industry. You add up 13% over a year or 18% of these commission fees over the year, you are doing a huge service to the Canadian business. So again, we're going to say this until you're deaf in the ears. Where you book makes a difference. Book direct. Okay. So Junior, you're going to close this out?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you know what also gets me about that is this 18% that gets sent out of the country. The companies use it to buy Google ads and position themselves above the actual business ads. So it's a negative. I mean, they use your money to work against you, and
look what
it's pretty
TripAdvisor has
insane.
done. TripAdvisor has pushed every business off that first page of Google. And now they go to their business, the version of TripAdvisor on there. So we've actually penalized ourselves by doing this. So we really got to smarten up.
You used to be able to search your business and you'd come up first, if not the first 2 or 3 listings. Now you search your business and you're on the second or third page.
Yep.
How does that work?
Yeah. And now what people are doing, oh, I'm saving myself 2 minutes. I'm paying more money on these OTAs and I'm shortening my visit because I didn't know there was this fabulous tour company here or this polar bear thing as Keith Henry was referring to, or this great fishing adventure. I didn't realize that because I went to these OTAs.
Yes.
Man, if you went to Indigenous Canada.ca, you'd know what's in that community. You'd stay longer and you'd spend more money. So come on, people.
And the businesses generally appreciate it. Call them direct. They will love you for it. And, you know,
remember, tourism is personality, character, and hospitality. Those websites give you none of that. Contact, get to know who the website is by looking at their website. Get to know who the host is by giving them a call. Remember, tourism is about connections, people, and the connection starts when you book. That's where the connection starts.
Exactly.
So book direct. That's our message. So, Junior,
and a good host can make a vacation. A bad host can kill your vacation. So it's great to find out who you're staying with.
Okay.
Anyway, on to the next segment. We have next week's show, Adventure Seeker program we are just launching, which you can sign up. Sign up is running down soon. What is it? 2 weeks, bro?
Yep.
2 weeks left to sign up. It doesn't cost anything. There's no obligation, but we want people, some wild people, normal people, family people, people who love the outdoors to sign up and share your stories with us. Check out the program. It's going to be huge, and we want the right people involved.
Yep. And one little note here to add to Junior is that not only do you become an adventure seeker, but you also get to meet with us every month. And guess what? You get to learn all the search engine tools, SEO tools, social media tools. We train you, and you're going to become a voice in your community. This is unreal, this program. And you got to check it out. Not only are you going to learn some valuable skills that you can apply to your association, your club, or your business, but you're also going to become an ambassador for seeking out sustainable tourism, ecotourism, adventure tourism, outdoor tourism, because that's our wheelhouse. That's what we do well. And like we mentioned to Keith Henry, we're coming and we're growing real fast. And
you'll be a celebrity in your community as well if you're an adventure seeker and promote your area. People love you for it.
Exactly. So thank you. Close it out, Colin. I'll play this little ending.
Woohoo! Thanks, everybody. Peace out.